Hi, friend.
Hi, friend.
And to the brave hearts listening out there, welcome to Permission to be Human. I'm Andrea.
And I'm Janelle.
Get ready for some real-time relationship woo and wisdom
from the front lines with occasional tantrums and tears
about how breaking rules, blurring boundaries, and tossing tradition can be catalysts for finding your truth.
Let's debunk the fairy tales we were told as children and create a new map for life.
Yes, Disney can go fuck itself.
If you're seeking permission to choose your own path,
freedom is the new F word, people,
and want to feel less alone along the way,
we got you. Please note, this is our side of the story. Our partners and metamors have their own individual experiences, and we do not speak for them. Hi, friend.
Hi, friend.
So happy to be here with you.
I'm so glad you're here.
And I love your spirit crown today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie Howell, for making amazing spirit crowns.
Yes. And for bringing out an outer expression of my inner state.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm channeling the cosmic sun queen today. Just
Sun Queen, where do you stay up nights thinking about this shit?
It just comes down. I'm not thinking. It's just a feeling. It's just what comes through me.
I love it. I love it. Oh, I just got a movie quote in already too. 2 points.
Of course, did I miss the movie quote?
Of course. I don't even expect you to get the movie quote in, but anyone who knows that movie quote should totally, if you write it in, I'll send you some stuff. So
the first one to write it in.
Here we go. Today, we are talking about compersion and conscious relationship. So just a little story. My family and I left our cats with our neighbors our cat Leo, with our neighbors when we went to Costa Rica for a year. We couldn't take him to Costa Rica. It was very complicated. Animals eating him, too dangerous. So, and they took him in. When we came back, we told our neighbors, you should stop feeding the cat now, right? Because we're back, and the cat was still going over to their house. But they kept letting the cat into their house. And my daughter was pissed. She was like, it's our cat. I want the cat to be in our house. The cat was in our house. We saw the cat plenty. But on principle's sake, she didn't want to share her cat. But the cat was happy. It was getting love from 2 households. And I couldn't really be mad at our neighbors. I couldn't really be mad at the cat either. And you know what I realized, Janelle?
I can't wait. What did you realize?
That we have a polyamorous cat. We do. Our cat has multiple partners and is getting lots of love.
OMG. Yes, he does.
And
it's all consensual. Everyone knows.
Everyone is on board. There's no secrets. So our cat is just imitating what it sees in our life.
And also teaching a lesson. It's back and forth, right? He's learning from you, you're learning from the cat.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that cat is so happy. So happy. And I've been pretty happy too with our lifestyle. So conscious relationships. That's where we're starting today.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah. It's a big, comprehensive place we've been living and striving to live.
Yes. And there's so many words in this lifestyle that we live.
Need to create a dictionary.
Oh, or a glossary. And so I find myself often, I'll hear a word and then realize, that's what I'm living, but I don't actually know what the word means. And when conscious relationships, that word came across my register, I was like, oh, what does this really mean? I looked it up, and my favorite definition came from Shelley Ballard. She's an MFT, and you can find her stuff on mindbodygreen.com. There's a blog that she wrote on there.
What does MFT mean?
Marriage family therapist.
Oh, right.
Thank you. Yeah. And she wrote a blog called The 4 Qualities of a Conscious Relationship. And the definition that she proposes is it's a romantic relationship in which both partners feel committed to a sense of purpose. And that purpose is growth. Individual growth and shared growth as a couple.
Taking a breath. Okay. Just taking that in. Romantic relationship in which both partners feel committed to a sense of purpose, and that purpose is growth. Individual growth, shared growth as a couple. Got it.
Mm-hmm. And that, in my bio, I say I'm a personal growth junkie, right? So like I have been on this personal growth path for a while. And what I realized is that so was my partner, my former husband. And so this was like, oh yeah, this makes sense. Both of us were really, when we say supporting each other's becoming, like this, we were very conscious about all of that. Oh, we're in a conscious relationship. So then they back into what I'm doing.
I think backing into what you're doing is just fine. Backing into a parking spot. That's okay. Yeah. We're backing into it. We're like, oh yeah, here I am.
Yeah.
I noticed myself now. Okay. So I'm going to ask a quick question. Does the relationship have to be romantic though?
To be conscious?
Yeah. I don't know if it does.
It doesn't have to be. I mean, I think you and I are in a conscious relationship.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking, my friend. Yeah.
And I think that part of the commitment to one another in a conscious relationship is that we are also supporting each other and calling each other up.
Beautiful.
So in that way, that the communication between us is, hey, I see something in you. Like, this is what I see you doing. Is this your intention? Is this what you mean? And I'm just offering that reflection. And you do the same for me. Well, you'll be like, hey, you're either like speaking for him, or you're making up a story, or you have filled in a lot of gaps that are not true.
Great.
So
Great
in
examples.
that way, we're calling each other out and calling each other up, because we both know we want to keep growing and know what's true for us.
Beautifully said. So it doesn't have to be romantic.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe we should just cross that one out.
So number one, the first pillar.
The four qualities of a conscious relationship. Number one.
Great. Shelley Ballard, according to Shelley Ballard of mindbodygreen.com. Number one is not attached to outcome. Growth comes first. So examples of this are physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. So that all those sorts of growth. When growth stops, we typically feel like there's something wrong with a relationship, right? It's like our quick duality to blame the other, to think, oh, it's his fault. It's her fault. I married the wrong person. But growth is sacred to keeping the ship alive. I'm just going to say ship here because this is how my teenage daughter talks, right? Do you know this?
No.
Oh yeah. This is like, she's like, oh my God, people are always shipping us. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, well, they're saying we should be in a relationship. This is like a total slang of teenagers now.
Okay.
Shipping.
Okay. Oh my gosh. I feel actually quite trendy right now.
Oh my gosh, for sure. No cap. No cap means no lie. No cap.
All right, Braveheart, are you taking notes? Now you can talk to a 13-year-old.
Exactly. No cap on God. That also means the truth. I just got 3 of them in there. My daughter's going to be so proud of me. So sorry, back to conscious relationships. Growth is the secret to keeping the ship alive. Now, let's remember that growth is scary. It's fucking scary. It's full of uncertainty, but we want to strive toward expansion, even at the risk of outgrowing the ship. That's the hard thing. I'm going to grow, but what if the cost of that growth is saying goodbye to my partner? I don't want that. I want to stay with my partner. So that's the scary part. So let's go into a couple of examples of this. Janelle, why don't you go first?
Okay. After a lot of struggle and growth and expansion, I realized that I had looked to the marriage to fulfill the feeling of love I wanted in myself and the growth. But that once I found it in myself, that I actually didn't need the marriage anymore. I had outgrown the marriage container, but not actually the person, not my partner, in the sense that he's still a really important person in my life. Just the marriage container that I outgrew, but I had to let go. Like if I had held on to the outcome of,
you were holding on to the outcome of the marriage.
I was holding on to the outcome. Right. And it was only when I let go of the outcome being the marriage, and I said, what I want the outcome to be is my self-love and our individual growth. Then I was able to come into right relationship.
Awesome.
With him and with me.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. So just reflecting that in that situation, originally you were attached to the outcome of the marriage, staying together, marriage remaining whole.
Right.
And
I spent so I got married at 45. Like I was like, oh, I've got it figured out. I know how to do this. I'm not going to get divorced.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So great. You didn't start out with a conscious relationship, but you were like, oh, a conscious relationship is about my growth, not about the outcome. Okay, beautiful. So
what about you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I got married like right before I was 30. And I would say after like maybe a decade, I was feeling a little stagnant, a little stuck. I didn't feel like my partner and I really saw each other anymore. It was so easy just not to see each other. It's just like you don't see the flowers on the table anymore because they're there every day. So my instinct was to think we had, I married the wrong person, or like we had just come to the end of our contract. But actually, when I look back now, I do think my growth had stalled. That wasn't the only thing, but it definitely was one thing. And I like growth. I wanted growth. I wanted new experiences. And so then 3 things happened over the course of many years and many tears. We explored the different ways a marriage could look. We eventually worked on our individual growth, which included one of the most important things, my willingness to be alone, to accept the idea that I could be alone. And then that allowed us to come together and work on our growth as a couple. And if I had a whiteboard, I would just like draw it out in this very neat flow chart. But it's a good thing I can't, because that's not how it looks.
There's nothing neat about it.
There's nothing neat about it. It's very messy. It's very scary. But I felt myself expanding at a certain point. And that I knew that was right. I was on the right track.
Beautiful. I also want to call out a word that you said. You said, like, I wondered if we were at the end of our contract. And that's felt really powerful to hear you say that, because I do feel that is what happened for me and for us, which was that the marriage contract ended, but that didn't actually end the relationship.
Awesome. Okay. And so and I'm not sure. I don't know if that's the right word. I think you've used soul contract in the past, which gives it a little more meaning.
Yeah.
I don't want it to feel like a real estate transaction.
Oh, right. I made the assumption that is what I mean. It was a soul contract.
Exactly.
Yes, very specifically soul contract.
But so when we did those 3 things, I worked on my individual growth, my husband did, and then we worked on our growth as a couple. Our marriage did evolve, and it has evolved. However, it's really easy to say, okay, we've evolved now. Oh my gosh, everything's gonna be great. Happy love ever after, fucking Cinderella. Like, you do get attached to that and you go back to it. But I know I have to remain unattached to any future outcome. Because as my dear friend Janelle, who's sitting with me right now, says, I must feel deeply and hold lightly. And I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen 3 years from now. I want to make sure I keep growing. I want to make sure that my partner keeps growing. And we'll see what that holds. But I know that we have both done a lot of growth and expansion, and that feels amazing.
Beautiful.
So I think we want to remember that conscious relationships only work if you're willing to look at yourself, regardless of what your relationship looks like, whether you're polyamorous or monogamous or whatever your format is. The ultimate goal of growth is to come home to yourself.
Right. And this is true if you're single as well.
Of course.
If you're not,
you're right.
You have to be willing to look at yourself as a single person.
Yes.
Not necessarily before in relationship, but the looking at yourself is key to humaning.
I would almost say before relationship, like, you know what I mean?
Well, I would say the relationship is what helped me look at myself. So I feel like they went in tandem that way. So I think
that's true. Good point. Okay.
Yeah. So I think you can look at yourself in a relationship, or you can look at yourself when you're single. But either way, the key to conscious is being willing to look at yourself.
Yeah, got it. And then the third point is, like, regardless of where you are, individually, you have to be committed to your growth. You cannot convince someone to grow or to want to grow or to work on their growth. If they're not interested, from my experience, it's difficult to stay in a partnership when one person isn't wanting to grow. This reminds me of when my husband and I decided to do the Peace Corps. I was 30 and he was 34. when we joined the Peace Corps, but the year and a half, 2 years leading up to that, we would wake up in the morning and he would say, "You still want to join the Peace Corps?" Because he was like, "There's no way I'm convincing you to go live in a fucking mud hut." Right? You have to want it. Of course, we did not end up in a mud hut at all. And I think that, it's a big move, right? You want to convince someone to do much of anything unless you're like sharing their Reuben sandwich.
Right.
Like, you do not want to convince them to have a child. It has to come from within. And that's taken me decades to learn.
And so I think the other thing I just want to point out, as we just talked about relationship formats a little bit, is that for both you and I, we feel that being in the poly relationship format did help us come home to ourselves, but that we know people who have come home to themselves in monogamous relationships as well.
Absolutely. It's not a requirement. Okay. So
All right.
Shelley's second pillar, you want to take it?
Yes. But each person is committed to owning their own shit.
Oh, beautiful. So true.
Why don't you lead with this one?
So for me, I had to stop blaming. I was in a really big habit of blaming. Whose fault is it? And I knew I had to stop holding anyone but myself accountable for my own emotions. It's really common. So I recognized that I had a lot of energy to release and I needed to find constructive ways to do that. Dancing, running, pillow screaming, being alone. I had to own my attraction to intensity. Right? That's owning my own shit. Intensity is really awesome. Janelle helps me remember. And it could sometimes turn toxic. So when you have a lot of emotion or energy and then you're turning it into loudness or sarcasm or accusations or blame, it's pretty ugly. And I recognized and started working on my own passive aggression as well. I just want to point out just a little story here that passive aggression is something I think I just grew up with. I mean, a lot of people did. I'm not blaming anyone for it. However, it's a habit of not being direct, being indirect. The sort of classic joke is, "Oh, bless her heart, she's such a little slut." Right? This is like a Southern phrase where it's like, we're making fun of people. We're like, "Oh, she's so sweet, but she's terrible." Right? But we're not saying that to her face. We're only saying that when she leaves. And in this way, we're just like avoiding the outer conflict. We're keeping social graces. We're not causing a scene. And it was a big lesson I learned. So I'm committed to my own shit and that never ends, right? I did all that work and I'm still working on all of it. And I may be for a long time.
Can I offer also a little reflection on that? It's something else that I heard you work through is that you've worked on not blaming and also not complaining.
Do you think I've achieved that?
No, but I think it's in your awareness.
Yes, I would agree. Definitely it's in my awareness, but that's owning my own shit. But yes, I would agree.
We are not here on this podcast saying, here's the destination, you're going to get there and then you get to get the gold star. Like you're going to get gold stars all along the way, but there's never like the last star. So awareness is the first step for so much of this. Yeah. And you telling me, "Oh, if you weren't sitting here, I wouldn't be complaining." I'm like, "Oh, that's useful for me to know."
That's when I said that to you like 6 months ago. And you're like, "I didn't know this. How could we have missed this important point?"
Right.
It is so true. When I'm around, like if my husband's with me, well, then I can complain to someone. If he's not with me, I have to suck it up.
Right. So that also gives me permission, I feel, from you to think, "Hey, are you complaining because it's useful or just because I'm standing here?"
Yeah. Great reflection, friend.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. What about you?
Okay. So for me, part of my journey in relationship was seeing my own worth. My former husband is incredible. He just has so many talents and accomplishments. And I have such deep respect for him. And what ended up happening initially is that I felt less than for a period of time in our relationship, which is not at all what he wanted. And I had to eventually look at the mirror for myself and say, "Oh, like, this is about me not loving myself enough.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about him loving me more.
Mm-hmm.
It's about me loving myself more. And another big breakthrough that I had was when I realized that I was crossing my own boundaries. He wasn't crossing my boundaries. I was crossing my boundaries. There's no one I could blame for the fact that I was like, oh, I want my life to look this way, then I'm going to make my life look this way. I can't wait for someone else to deliver the life that I want to me.
Mm-hmm. Can you give me an example of one of those boundaries?
I do have an example. When we moved in next door together, I realized, oh, the energy of the house, how can we make the energy of the house really comfortable for both of us? And he's an introvert, I'm an extrovert. And I knew that at like around 10 o'clock at night, he starts to crash. So I offered to him, okay, how about we do silence after 10 o'clock? And he was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. That would be incredible. And so we instituted that. I put it on my calendar, 10 o'clock every night.
Nice.
Janelle, silence. And I really wanted the energy of the house to be smooth. So that felt like a really good idea. And the vision that I had of wanting the energy to be nourishing to both of us was a noble one. But I didn't want to be quiet at 10 o'clock. Like, it wasn't natural for me.
That's when you come alive. I mean, you're alive the whole day, but yeah.
Right. So it was like, oh, like I was putting his needs above my own.
Yep.
In trying to like figure out what works for both of us. I was not putting myself on an equal playing field.
Beautiful example. And we're quick to solve, quick to fix.
Mm-hmm.
I hear that. I do that all the time.
Yeah. And quick to fix and sacrifice myself in the fixing.
Totally. And not realizing it until you're like, shit, I want to talk right now and I have to be quiet, fucking quiet. Like,
I have to look at my calendar. Ding, ding, be quiet. Because it wasn't coming naturally. So the owning my own shit was that I also had to, so then I had to learn to ask for what I wanted.
mm-hmm.
Right. Mm-hmm. So what I had to do was learn what it is that I wanted, which is step one.
Yeah.
And then step two is to actually ask for it.
Love it. So just yesterday, I was at my hairstylist, Christiana, who I adore. She's really one of my spirit friends. And I got there and I'd had an intense day. Shocking. And I'd just been boxing with you and got in there, sat down. She was sweeping. I said, I have 3 requests. I need something to eat. I need an iPhone cord and I want you to play Amy Winehouse. And she was like, I love how clear you're being. I love how you know exactly what you want and you're telling me. I'm like, what a great response, right?
What a great response.
And I knew that she would accommodate me. So it felt like so good to be direct about what I wanted, knowing of course that she may not. I kind of instinctively knew that she could help me, but it would have been okay if she couldn't help me with one of those as well. It was a request, not a demand.
Right.
Super important too.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Should we move on to number 3?
We should.
All feelings are welcome and no internal process is condemned. Whew. Yes. So what do we got for this one? So one of the phrases I've started using is, I get to have my feelings. And then another phrase I use is, don't tell me how I feel. Please don't tell me how I feel. And everyone does. Everyone gets to have their feelings. I think sometimes I can selfishly not want to deal with people's emotions, which is pretty hypocritical considering I have really big ones. But recently you told me, Andrea, like I was worrying about my partner getting angry about something. And you said, you're not being fair. Like he gets to have his feelings and he gets to express them. I'm like, you're totally right. That's fine. He can have his feelings. All I can control is my reaction to those feelings. There's a recent example with my daughter when I asked her if she wanted to watch the NBA finals. game, one of the finals games with my husband and I. The Nuggets are like winning right now. Totally a bandwagoner fan. But we've been having fun with it. And I was mildly disappointed when she said no. And then she got upset when I was disappointed. And I said, hey, I'm allowed to have my feelings. I can be disappointed if you're not joining us. And you don't have to change anything. Mm-hmm. And so that really felt important to me to call that out. Mm-hmm. So that is the first thing about owning your feelings. The second thing you have to remember is that about the process, no process is condemned, right? Is that part of it? Mm-hmm. That everyone processes.
No internal process is condemned.
No internal process is condemned. So Janelle, you and I like to externally process. Mm-hmm. And I love externally processing. I heart externally processing. Other people who I live with, who shall remain nameless, need time alone. Mm-hmm. They process at a slower rate. It's fine. No judgment. That's great.
And I don't know if it's slower. I also just, because there's a judgment to slower, I feel like.
Okay. Well, I just said no judgment to it, but you feel like it's like inherent there.
Yeah. I just think it's internal. It's going to take the time. Like your external doesn't mean like you external and that you're done as soon as you say it out loud. Like there's a lot of going on. So that's just not, the speed isn't there. It's the external versus the internal.
Fair enough. Good point. So it is important for me to remember that if I have a conflict with my daughter or my husband, that I want to rush and talk to them immediately. I have such a sense of urgency to get it all out. I've battled with this for so long. And I received this beautiful piece of insight from Jenny Thompson, who's a counselor at my daughter's school. And she reminded me one time I was telling her about a conflict I had with my daughter and that I went in to talk to her about it. And she says, yeah, that's great, except you're doing that for you, not for her. She doesn't need it. You do, but she doesn't. And so she might need the time alone to process. And this is just something I remember.
Yeah.
So what about you? How are you making sure that the feelings are being honored and that you're not condemning a process?
In terms of the feelings, what I had to do was to learn to embrace the full spectrum of feelings. I am naturally joyful and optimistic and did not embrace grief and anger for a long time in my life. And so that the moving and accepting of that spectrum of the emotional field was really important to me being able to feel my feelings. And then similar to you, my partner, also an internal processor, and I am the external processor, and just had to live with the acceptance of each of our ways of processing.
How long do you think that took?
A long, long time. But I will say this for people who are external processors who have the urgency to share or talk right away is I figured out first that, maybe processing with him is not my best way. So then I would turn and processed with you. And that worked for a long time. Or like that was, okay, I'd process out loud with you, process out loud with you. And then I would be able to go back to him.
14-minute box.
Right. Exactly. And now I would say I've gotten to the point of, I just know if I let myself wait, it might be an internal process or not, but that I don't actually have to process with you either. Like I think what it is that, I see what the difference is. It's not that I'm still an external processor. I'm just needing to process a lot less. Yeah.
I hear you. And our Vox record would show that.
Yes.
We used to process a lot on it.
Yeah.
We go through less difficult times now, probably, or different
yeah,
times.
We've just come to greater awareness of ourselves.
Yeah.
So then back to the question, is accepting each other's way of processing is key.
Great. Anything else on that? Should we move to number 4?
Yep, let's do it.
The relationship is a place to practice love. Seems so obvious. And yet something we should try to remember. So this reminds me of it's a country song. Watch out. It's not very twangy, but it's a country song called Something That We Do, sung by Clinton Black. It was popular maybe in the 90s. And the whole refrain of the song is, love isn't someplace that we go. It's something that we do, right? Love is not a state. It is an action. It is a skill. It is a practice.
Mm.
And that was almost like, what was he talking about when I was in college?
Mm-hmm.
Because I had thought of it as a place I reached, in a sense, like a state that I would enter.
Mm.
And as well as an action, but it was a good reminder. It's like, this is something we do every day. Love is the way that I make the bed. Love is the way that I hug. Love is the way that I listen. Yeah. Love is the way that I'm present. And I just think this is a really good reminder that it is a practice.
I hear it, what you're saying, and it makes sense. And I loved your examples of like, love is how I make the bed. Yeah. To me, the way I feel it is like I am love. So for me, it is a state of being, but this love is permeating through everything. So in the same way, like love is how I make the bed. And yet I'm seeing it as a state versus the doing.
I agree. Love is I am love. I represent love.
Mm-hmm.
I am in a state of love. But before I was looking to need two people for that.
Yes. Okay.
So that's the difference.
Totally agree.
I was falling in love. We were in love together.
Yes.
And that's where that doesn't feel aligned anymore.
Right.
I think that leads.
And it's not a destination. Like
No.
it's just.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Important. But that does lead us into compersion.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about the definitions of compersion?
So compersion, according to Wikipedia, says it's the antithesis of jealousy. Urban Dictionary says it's the feeling of joy when a loved one invests in and takes pleasure from another romantic or sexual relationship. I also see compersion is really what a friend would feel at seeing their friend happy or seeing their child happy.
Mm-hmm.
It's taking pleasure or joy or happiness from someone else's joy or happiness.
Yeah, beautiful. I find it fascinating that this is a fairly simple idea. And yet, when I type it into Google Docs, it underlines it in red.
Right.
It doesn't fucking know this word. Like, what the fuck? Like, it's such an odd thing. It's just not a word that we know.
Right.
That's in society. When I use it, people are like, "What do you say? What'd you say?"
Mm-hmm.
So we're bringing it back.
I also want to make the distinction about compersion because part of my lesson was thinking that compersion also was like, oh, I'm going to get like turned on when my partner was someone else. Right. And that's not how I see it. To me, that is a desire or a turn on. That is a very distinctly different feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how I think of compersion when my partner was with someone else. And I just knew that it was like a feeling in my body where, oh, like he's asking for and getting what he needs. And I'm really happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
And it might not even be that I like what he wants and needs, but I'm happy that he's asking for it and getting it.
Beautiful. Yeah. And I've heard us both say, I'm so happy he has someone to talk to about that. I'm so happy that he's getting what I can't give him because I cannot be all things. This is the way. Mandalorian. So I think that compersion, though, is something that I learned about early in my polyamorous journey and was very, very challenging in the beginning. It used to be that I had a witching hour at 11.
I'm familiar. I had that same witching hour.
Sure did. So we would call each other when my husband would spend the night, away. And in the morning when he came home, I would see that it was good for him, right? He needed this escape, this rejuvenation. He was being met in a different way. But for a long time, I was just emotional, cry, missed him. What's going on? Why did I agree to this? This is terrible. But I eventually saw him come home to himself, and I'm now able to put my love of him first instead of my love of the relationship.
Just breathing into that.
Yeah, that is like, I don't think I've said that out loud. Like, and what this involves is being uncomfortable. And like, I want that for you, even if it's hard for me. I'm willing to be uncomfortable for you because I support your growth and I love you. And I heard you say that to me about a month ago. I said, oh, are you comfortable with this? You're like, no, I'm uncomfortable, but I'm willing to be uncomfortable. And then I said it like 3 days later to my husband as he wanted to venture into some new territory. I said, let me breathe into that. It's a little uncomfortable, but I understand. And I'm willing to be uncomfortable because I support your growth. And I know I'm okay myself and come back to me.
Yeah.
So there's me learning compersion over time.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
What about you?
When we got married, the basis of our vows was supporting each other's becoming. And saying that was one thing. And I was like, I'm in. But when we invited another woman into our relationship, I realized that living that vow was a whole other game. I had to face the fear that he would leave me for someone else. And I came over time to accept that if there was someone who was better for him than me, the deepest way I could love him would be to let him go.
So hard. Yeah, but beautiful.
And as our marriage continued and I continued to expand and grow, I saw that it wasn't about someone else, that it was the marriage container that was keeping me small. And the way that I see it, the best way to support his becoming and my becoming was to let the container go. And in that way, like, love each other and love him the most I could love him. And along that journey, so we talked about Wikipedia's definition is that compersion is the antithesis of jealousy. I would say that the journey from jealousy to compersion walked hand in hand with my own awakening.
Yeah, I can see them on parallel paths. It's big stuff.
I know. We talked about trying to add some more laughter and jokes into our podcast because we're just talking about pretty big stuff here all the time.
So I just want to call out one more thing that I got some relief. I interviewed someone about when we were doing the research for this podcast about a year ago. And this guy, Peter, I interviewed him and he told me, he just said on the Zoom, he's like, yeah, I'm not good at compersion. It's totally not my thing. His partner was like, yeah, I can do it. Works for me. And I just felt like he had given me this permission slip that like, oh yeah, I didn't have to be that good at it. And it was something that I could get better at. But if I wasn't good at it right away, that was okay.
Right. And what I believe he said, like, oh, I'm not good at it and I'm still doing it.
Of course.
Right. Or I can still try it.
Yes. Right. But he was comfortable, like being like, yeah, it's hard. And I think for a while I was beating myself up thinking, I can't do it. It's too hard. I can't do it. I'm failing. And just knowing that it was a journey.
So this is reminding me of something. So when couples end up choosing IVF.
Oh yeah.
I figured out they don't start like, okay, I want to have a baby. Okay, great. I'm ready for IVF. they like start by trying to have a baby and then get pregnant naturally. And then, challenge. Okay. So then they do the next step and then they do the next step. And then, okay, now we get doctors involved and now there's fertility treatments. And then it's the next step. And then it's the next step. And then like 2 years later, they're like, okay, I'm ready for IVF. And like, there's a huge leap that doesn't get made to go from how you thought you were going to have a baby to choosing IVF. That there is a journey that must be walked.
Wow.
And that it's the same, I feel like, for compersion, which is that I have this aspirational idea of compersion. Oh yeah, I can like put myself on this highest pedestal of like just feeling at peace and in grace and in love for my other partner's happiness. But no, it was a really long journey from knowing that existed, from like when I was in the shower at like the depths of my jealousy, screaming, crying, and ripping my heart out.
Yeah.
To where I am today.
Okay. Excellent.
Like 3 years potentially, which is, I think, in fact.
Yeah. So one of our Bravehearts asked the question, so how long did it take you to arrive at compersion? We both said 3.5 years.
Yeah.
It's a long time.
Mm-hmm.
To be clear too, you didn't go through IVF. You're viewing this.
Yes.
I want to make sure that you're not, this is not speaking from experience. But
no, not speaking from experience. I did go through some fertility treatments to try to freeze my eggs. And so went some steps along the way.
I see.
But yes, thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah. I want to end by addressing one more C word, and that word is commitment. And in the beginning, when I got married, I was committed to the marriage and I was committed to my husband. I think I'm still committed, but I'm now committed to my growth, his growth, and love. So it's still commitment, but just the commitment focus has shifted. What do you think?
I'm really feeling the impact of my former partner's, like his commitment to me has never changed. He made a commitment to me like very, very early in our dating. And that has been unwavering the entire time and is still present today. And the commitment, I think, to you that I had to learn was, I was committed to this marriage container, and letting go of the marriage container allows me to be committed to him. I'm committed to my individual growth, as you said, and be committed to his growth. And I'm just really honoring that. I really see in his commitment to me of supporting my becoming, he got married to me for me. And there was a lot of pain in my journey that he witnessed, that I projected and blamed him for. Back to like this whole thing about conscious relationships. And I'm just really grateful for him. And I feel that, so commitment, I feel, is very present in conscious relationships, regardless of the outcome.
Love it. So I hope you enjoyed the 4 pillars of conscious relationship.
So number 1, that we're not attached to the outcome, and that growth comes first. Number 2, each person is committed to owning their own shit. Number 3, all feelings are welcome and no internal process is condemned. And number 4, the relationship is a place to practice love.
And compersion.
Yeah.
So be sure and check out our polyformats episode if you're polycurious. That's going to complement this episode really well. And I do have some Braveheart homework. You want to hear it?
I do.
You ready, Bravehearts? Okay, I want you to try on compersion. Try on compersion. It's spelled, by the way, it's spelled COMPERSION. Just try it. I want you to think of it like an old leopard skin coat that used to be your grandma's that you found in the attic, right? It's unfamiliar. It's exotic. It's a little stiff. It needs worn in.
Maybe a little musty,
right? A little bit smelly, but it looks so damn good on you, and it makes people around you happy too. So here's to your leopard skin coat.
Love it.
Friend, you look so radiant in your spirit crown.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm the Cosmic Sun Queen. Okay, Bravehearts, thank you for joining. See you next time.
Do you need permission to be human? You got it. Listen, subscribe, and review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Learn more about us at permissiontobehuman.live.